You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. Ray Collins is an ocean photographer from New South Wales, Australia. His surfing photography caught the attention of editors, and he went on to photograph some of the world's greatest surfers and mightiest waves. A life change in 2012, which we're going to talk about later, got him to reapproach his photography and his message. His gorgeous abstract details, portraits as he calls them, of waves are about the most powerful image of the ocean you may ever see, and they brought his work into the realm of galleries, fine art photography, and book publishing, specifically the books Water and Light and Found at Sea. His work explores the complexities of water and light with gusto, but he notes, "My aim is to show the ocean as a living, breathing thing, to document it in all its intimidating strengths and to bring awareness to its delicate fragility." It's worth noting Ray is an ambassador for Aquatech and Epson Australia, and he is supported by Nikon, Patagonia, Defin, and Sunzapper. Welcome to our show. You're back home right now in Australia, right?
Yes, thanks for having me. Good morning from Australia.
Let's start with two seemingly important life events that played a big hand in getting you where you are today as a photographer. The first was a mining accident, and the second was your decision to stay sober. And what's the connection between the two, if there is any? And how did that affect your photography? If I'm assuming you were already a photographer, but tell us if you weren't.
Well, the mining accident happened at my old work, which I worked in an underground coal mine. That's as kind of odd as it sounds. It's a kilometre or 3/4 of a mile straight down in an elevator shaft, and then it's about 20 kilometres in through a series of tunnels. I was working all alone, isolated, and I had a grade 3 lateral meniscus tear, which kind of basically at the time it was an extreme amount of pain, and I was in the fetal position on the ground, wondering what was going to happen next. That injury, that workplace accident, was the reason I started photography. It happened in 2007, and the time that I had where I couldn't drive or I couldn't walk and I couldn't be active, that was the time where I bought my first camera. And I read the manual backwards and forwards and really just pulled bits of information out of it, learnt how shutter speed and ISO and aperture all work together. And I had my dog as a muse, and she was kind of my introduction to photography in many ways, from that, bad blessing in disguise.
You had no connection to photography before this? This is something that just came to you, or this is something that was always in the back of your mind?
2007, I had no connection to photography.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
What I find really striking is the fact that you've gone from a coal mine to probably the most opposite kind of environment that you can get into, being out in the ocean, taking pictures of waves crashing over you, as opposed to being, a mile or two down and across just in the bowels of the earth in coal.
Man, it was like I was living a double life. It was my black life and blue life.
Wow. Now, you had this accident. Now, is the sobriety tied into that too? Is this all part of one big life shift for you? Or was that, just something that came down as a result of it, or in addition to?
If you look at a timeline of my life up to this point, they're not related in any way. One happened in 2007 and one happened in 2012, but they were both gentle, well, not so gentle corrections on the path I was meant to take. So they were just, just things that I needed to stop and listen to. With the alcohol, I was 30 years old, and I'd kind of been, drinking with my buddies since I was about 15 or 16. So basically half of my time on earth was spent Fridays and Saturdays either having a couple of beers at a barbecue or being hungover the next morning. And I thought, well, there's got to be more. I've got to see, like, this can't be it. It can't be 15 years of being a child, then 15 years of kind of just living in a haze. And if you look at alcohol in my genetics and my DNA, my mother was the 11th or 12th or 13th child from Russia, and half of her brothers and sisters are all dead from alcohol-related disease and misadventure. And my father also, he took his own life, and I believe that he was battling with a lot of substance abuse and whatnot as well. So I thought to myself, maybe it's up to me to break this chain. And looking back now, it was by far the biggest and best decision I'd made, because as we're all photographers here, we know that the golden light in the mornings and in the afternoons is the very best time to get those rich contrasts and colors. And I was kind of wasting that by being either too lazy from having drinks the night before to get up and watch the sun and shoot the waves, or being, out and about on the town when I could have been dedicating my efforts to something a lot more pure.
You seem to understand the language of water and form and shape and light. How'd you get in the water, basically? What brought you there?
It's all I have ever known. Like I said, not having my father around, it was the place that I went to learn a lot of life's lessons. It taught me so many things. It taught me like the true value of patience, because you can't override this massive force that's way bigger than you. You just have to sit and wait it out. It taught me respect. It showed me how life can be when you're truly in tune with things, and how to go with the flow. And from the very earliest memories of my life, the ocean has been there, and it's all I've known. There's no other way that I've experienced life but by being near the shore. And photography was the introduction to documenting it. Otherwise, I'd still be surfing and all of that other stuff. My life would still revolve around the ocean, but I have a vehicle to capture it and to share it with the world now.
And was that when you took the camera out into the ocean, was it kind of immediate? You realized everything's clicking and this is what you wanted to be doing, or did it take a while, a couple of trial and errors?
It felt so natural. It was one of the most natural progressions I've ever felt. It was almost effortless. And within a couple of weeks, I remember just talking to my sister and kind of explaining that I've bought this camera, I've bought this water housing to put the camera in, and I'm going to aim to get a photo published in the next 12 months. I don't really care if it's buried in the back of a magazine as a postage stamp, black and white, with, I don't care. I just want to get something published so I can tick that off the list. And within a couple of months, I had my first cover shot and balls were rolling. And it really took me by surprise. And they were, at the time, some of the most fondest memories, walking into a newsagent and seeing something you created staring back at you from the shelf and just being like, wow, this is it.
Were these first shots surfing shots, or were they of waves, the first shot that you sold?
It was of my friend, Michael, who wasn't really a sponsored surfer or anything at the time. So it made it even kind of more dramatic that they would put him on the cover of a magazine. It was purely surfing. But even looking back now, looking through the kind of the fabric of my early work, it really was. The waves were always the star of the show. The person who was on them surfing, they were just there to complete the composition, to add scale and to give it kind of a focal point. And I started shooting my friends who also worked in the mines or worked in heavy industry, who happened to be really good surfers. And over the time, I ended up working with some of the biggest names in the sport, guys like Kelly Slater, who was kind enough to write the intro to Found at Sea, my first book. I'll always be grateful that the world's best surfer of all time would spend a couple of minutes to jot down some nice things about myself and my work. So you had noted that risking personal safety was important to getting some of your better shots. Can you elaborate on that a bit? Other than just the obvious being in the surf with surfers around, but were you doing something that was way crazy? Well, this has given me time, like the time since all this happened. It's given me a lot of options to reflect, and I feel like the risk management protocols that I followed underground and how to analyze hazards and minimize them to an acceptable level, I feel like that has also transferred into the ocean side of things. Like, you're always calculating, and the thin line of safety is pretty fluid. So you're doing your best to kind of stay safe, but understanding that, the worst case scenario can happen. And in that moment of flux and safety and excitement, that's my studio. That's where I'm set up, and I'm waiting for something to happen.
How do you control safety when you are in the midst of that much energy?
That's exactly right. You are in the midst of that much energy. You just have to sit in these little pockets and just feel the movement and feel the cycle of the waves. And yeah, it's a constantly dynamically moving situation. And I feel like John Appleseed can't just walk out and jump into situations like this, because he will certainly die within seconds. But having the experience, having the kind of relationship with the ocean, I feel like the moods that it presents, you learn about it, and they're kind of imprinted over time after time after time. And that is a big part of being comfortable, is being exposed to something. But I can see it from your angle, and sometimes I look at stuff that people have shot, and if you can see me in the frame, and I'm like, wow, am I an idiot? I mean, I don't need to answer that question, because oftentimes I am, but yeah, it's kind of baffling sometimes.
And when you're in these moments when you're kind of in the chop but you find that sweet spot. I mean, now you got to add the addition to of a large heavy camera, and I guess my question wants to go toward this idea of how aware of the image that you're taking are you at that moment? Do you kind of realize, wow, I just got a good one there, or are you just shooting away, or is it something that's even impossible to really know until you get back and look at it later?
It can be a combination of all of those things. For me, the photo that I will edit and publish or print, that pressing the button down to make that image is not the start of the process. It's 3/4 of the way in, because before I can push that button down, there's a lot of research and a lot of tracking storms and checking tides and wind, and even the path of the sun at certain times of year. If you're looking at a globe, you're watching storms appear, in the Atlantic and Pacific and Indian Oceans. That's kind of one of my favorite things to do, because I can then plot where I think the waves will kind of end up being the nicest or the biggest or the most cleanest. And I can look at a part of a coastline and know that, okay, so if I'm here by, May the 6th, that looks like the biggest day of the thing. So I might try and, get there and do all that stuff, take the photos.
And what's the zone that you tend to work? Are you, do you work a lot close to your home? Are there particular beaches, or, how well do you get to know the areas you're shooting in, at least for the wave series?
I feel like different places and different countries, that they all have different personalities, and I can see like the ocean or the waves and kind of almost know geographically where that may be. Like, I can tell a wave that's in Hawaii over a wave that's in Portugal, like pretty easily and pretty quickly. So I have a few certain favorite places that I tend to go to each year, and for that reason, because it is in a way predictable. But yeah, you can do everything you can to plan all this stuff. You just have to show up then and let Mother Nature kind of have the last say.
So a lot of these photos then are really from all over the world.
Yeah, yep. I've been fortunate enough to shoot all through Europe, Iceland, Mexico, New York, Far Rockaway.
Yeah. I saw some of those pictures.
all over. But I can walk down the end of my street with no forethought, no planning, and also get an amazing image that I didn't expect or plan for. So there really is no hard and fast rule. I just I do as much work as I can and just show up and hope for the best, really.
How long would a usual, session out in the ocean be? I mean, I'm sure it's different all the time, but if you really say, all right, today I want to get out there and I really want to take advantage, how long will you stay out?
Until the light goes bad, generally. I'm dictated totally by the sun, I guess, and some kind of external lighting. But that is the basis of all my work. The two ingredients are water and light, and that's what I'm doing. So, but I can definitely spend 8 hours swimming, no problems. That's something that I've done, and just put like a chocolate bar up my sleeve in my wetsuit, and we're good to go.
That's great.
All of your photographs, it seems, with the exception of a few monochromatic images, are color. And the color is part of the magic of these pictures, especially the one towards sunrise and sunset, where you have that gorgeous gold against the blue. Have you ever worked in monochrome for any of these? Because I could see all of these images, not some of them, but just about all of them that I'm looking at, would be equally strong in black and white, and maybe even a little bit stronger. And I know you also mentioned you're colorblind, which I don't think really would affect what you're doing here in any way. It's not textiles that you're doing.
That's so true. Yeah, the color blindness thing is kind of a weird one, because once again, that's all I've ever known. There was no moment before or after that I can compare it to. So
you're not missing much. I could tell you.
But I tend to focus on the belief that I might be deficient in one area of sight, but I feel like maybe that's given me a unique kind of ability for maybe contrast or textures or compositions. So it's funny that you say that with it being black and white, because I do often check. I'll drag the saturation sliders to 0 to just have a look at what it could be in black and white, and sometimes it stays there. And then, but I can't do all of them black and white because, maybe I can. I don't know, but they would all be. I'm scrolling as we're talking, and every single one of them is a very powerful composition, which is, not easy to do when you are in fact bouncing around and getting jostled by your subject, which is a lot bigger and more powerful than you are. You also mentioned earlier that getting people in these shots for scale. And I appreciate that, especially with landscapes and cityscapes. Sometimes you have one person and it just puts everything in perspective. But what I find particularly interesting about your photographs is that the waves themselves have such form, and the energy that's in it and the fluidity of them. They don't need people for scale. They are unique unto themselves, and their very shape and their structure and the explosive qualities of some of them. That's all it needs. It'd be nice to see, and look how big it is, because of how tiny this person is. It doesn't matter in here. Sometimes you need that person. Your shots, you don't need that.
Yeah, these are something different.
Yeah, thanks heaps. That's taken a long time to come to this kind of moment.
Well, what do you look for when you're in your edit and you're going back and looking at it? What is it that would stand out in one over the other that is gonna? As I was saying, or at least thinking about this idea of that, I think Alan's hinting at it, gives you this idea to let your imagination run wild and see mountains, or I'm seeing animal shapes, things like that. But you always know what it is, and then you get this giant feeling of, oh man, if this thing came crashing down on you, there's that intimidation factor. But what do you look for to make one a little bit, different and better than the other, if possible, or something you want to publish?
I don't know. There's sometimes this images have this thing about them, this decisive little thing it's hard to explain, but I guess it's a point of difference, and that's something that will draw your eye into it. That's what I look for. Most of the time, the waves themselves haven't even broken yet. It's the anticipation of what's going to happen next, and that's why you question it, because you want resolution. You want to solve what's going to happen next. And that's what art should be. It should make you interact with it in some way. And that's kind of my aim is to get people like kind of tilting their heads and, just what is actually happening here. And that's like, okay, I've done my job with that one. And it's not all white sand and palm trees, like it's this scaling cliffs and jumping off, the side of mountains into the ocean and getting it done. Some mornings it's really hard.
Yeah, it really is a matter of just guessing and going by intuition, and it's hit and miss, a lot of it. And when it happens, it's magic, but you can't do it again too. Each one of these is perfectly unique.
It's so true. It's an ephemeral moment that it is, and it was, and it'll never be again. And I can't believe that I get to wake up and do this. I can't believe this is my job. Like, are you actually kidding? I get to go out in the ocean every morning and make a living out of that. Like, sign me up.
People from the other side of the planet call you and talk about it. It's amazing.
Yeah. I just kind of wanted to follow up a little on what Alan was talking about and say, you're Ray, you're the expert. I mean, you've been in there, you grew up here, you're there day in, day out making these images. Do you feel a little bit more that you have an anticipation, when that wave is coming, or you're looking 2 or 3 breaks down? Does that, or is Alan totally right? It's just kind of a, roll with it and we see what we get later.
So I tend not to try and think or overthink. It's almost like a practice of meditation in a way. I just forget what I should be doing and just wait for the movements left and right until, I don't know, a moment kind of happens. I really try not to invest too much time or thought or control over it. And just like you said, it is kind of an intuition thing. And the more you kind of switch off from thinking about it, the more kind of organic it is, I feel. And I don't know, I don't even feel like I'm a photographer sometimes. Like, I'll shoot for months and then I won't pick up a camera for 3 or 4 months. It's so odd, but I'll have a backlog of images that I can just sit and edit and go through and catch up on other things. But yeah, most people, when they have a holiday or when they need some time away, they go to the beach, but I kind of go the opposite way. I go into the mountains and just experience like a totally different.
Do you shoot a lot when you're in that moment and you're making images? Do you shoot a lot? Do you keep that finger on the shutter, or do you say, I'm going to do this one?
Yeah, I feel like I'm using a D850 now, and that's 8 frames a second. It's way more than enough to get that decisive moment. If you know when to push your finger down, like you only need a frame or a couple of frames to do that. So I try and be kind of trying to hold back a little bit and just wait for the moments. But sometimes it's spray and pray as well. So yeah.
Do you also shoot underwater? I mean, I know you shoot just underwater, but do you go down deep?
My love for the ocean is surface deep. All of the big bad massive animals and whatever else, I try not to think about that stuff and just be this little cork floating on the top of the ocean and taking, just having my moment and just pretending the rest of it doesn't exist. So there's a real dissonance that you have to kind of practice, because if you really think about what's happening out there, it's absolutely terrifying, and I want absolutely no part of that. So yeah, my love for the ocean, although it's so vast and so wide, it's very surface deep.
Something I was curious about that I noticed when going through your photographs, your waves, you name each of them: Gravity, Hook, Turner, Heavens, Green Peaks. You don't go in for the typical, wave number 107 Inner Nairobi, which is the snooty way of doing it, but you actually give each one like little names. And some of them are make sense, like tree. I see the connection, but some of them are just very, aesthetic or ethereal. Is there a method to your madness for coming up with individual names for each of these pictures?
Yeah, there's a method, and it is part madness. I think I just look at the image and just feel something, and then if I get kind of a word or a feeling, I might just type that into Google or type it into Translate or a million different things, thesaurus, and then something usually jumps out. And then oftentimes I'm so married to that word, but other times it's like, oh yeah, that'll do. But there's no real kind of, it's just something I started doing, and now I've come too far that I cannot stop. Have you repeated it like, speculum 4? That's a good idea. I might do that actually. For this, I've just released a limited edition series, and they're all just Roman numerals. So I'm really just bucking my own trend here.
Okay, all right. Okay, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to be talking gear and technique with Ray Collins. Stay tuned.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. The best way to support the show is by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. For links to gear and more information on today's guests, check out the show notes in your podcast app or visit our homepage on the B&H Explorer website and join the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group. And now, back to the show.
We are back with Ray Collins all the way from Australia, the other side of the planet. This is amazing. And it sounds like he's right next door. Anyway, we started to talk about cameras and using a Nikon D850, was it, or D810?
Both, but the D850 currently.
Okay. Now, aside from camera gear, what's some of the stuff that you take in the water with you as far as cameras, lenses, flash if you use them, and definitely underwater housings? Because I know you void the warranty if you go into salt water with a Nikon DSLR.
Yeah, you're not going to have a long career if you take it.
You got to shoot real fast
into the salt water. So I mainly shoot primes, to be honest, from 14 to 300. That's my bread and butter. 35, 50, 85, 105, the 135, and jump straight from 135 to the 300. But I've recently incorporated the 70 to 200 zoom, which I didn't use for a long time, and I've found some flexibility in being able to zoom, which is really, really nice. Normally, my fins, my flippers on my feet are my zoom, so if I need to get closer, I'll kick in or kick out. So,
and you have to determine what you're taking with you before you go in, because you can't change lenses out there. It's like you have to, before you go in, you're saying, okay, this is what I'm using, and I'm going to have to work according to what this lens does within the parameters of what a wide angle would do or a 300. You can't shoot the same way.
Yeah, and it's kind of freeing because it takes all of the distraction and, chattering of what you should and shouldn't do, because you have to just do what you have. So it narrows down what you can do, but it also, cuts your thinking off from all the things that you want to do, if that makes sense. I don't know.
As one of my teachers once said, once you know what you can't do, everything else is possible. And it's the same thought things. Okay, here's my parameters. This is what it can do. This is what it cannot do. Let's do what it's best for, and that's what you look for. So that is a freeing thing, and that goes not just for underwater photography or wave photography, even just walking down the street. Anyway, I'm just babbling here.
But you take that 300 into the water with you too? I
put a 1.4 converter on it too, so I'm getting 420 from the water, which it's. If you're bobbing up and down and there's waves hitting you and you're getting sucked around reefs and over rocks and against, cliff ledges, if you move your hand or your eye, and if you move your camera a couple of inches in your hand, your field of view is moving 10 meters. So it really is an extreme crapshoot, such a lucky kind of.
And can you see through the viewfinder even?
Yeah, you can. It's just all happening so quickly. So with my water housing, I screw a plate into the bottom of the camera and I slide it into the Aquatech housing. And with the housing, you buckle the back plate on and you have all your buttons line up in order with the camera buttons. So you can basically use all the functions you would normally use on land. You can use all those in the water. There's a couple of custom memory functions you need to kind of enable to get the most kind of use out of it. But yeah, you're basically having full control while being in a totally out of control place.
Do you wear any kind of face protectors or anything? Because I imagine after a while of that housing and camera getting smashed against your face, your nose gets pretty flat. I mean, seriously, you could hurt yourself because that's a bulky, hard item, and you're literally being thrown around in the water.
I've got stitches on every limb and every part of my body, pretty much, from surfing and camera related stuff. It definitely gets you because you're so focused. Something that's with a 300 mils, you're focused on something that's 50 meters away. So you're forgetting about your peripherals, and then boom, you don't even get a chance to brace for it. You just underwater, just going like, what the hell just happened?
You're minding your own business. All of a sudden, 5 tons of water comes down on you. Like, where'd that come from?
Yeah, it's the only studio where it's, the walls are caving in on you and it's literally trying to kill you while you're trying to shoot your subject.
And is Aquatech what makes the housing for the lenses too, even the 300, or do you have to get that custom made?
Yeah, so they've got ports and they're threaded, so they screw on and off. And so if you're using a longer lens, you use a longer port, all the way down to a dome for a fisheye. They're all available at B&H Photo, mind you.
So where's that now?
It's a little mom and dad store in New York somewhere. Every camera, every lens setup, you have the option to change your port system and get out there and use that combination in the water.
And have you always used Aquatech? I don't want this to be just a big plug for them, but I know I used it for a little bit when we were doing some on-set still photography. And a lot of guys use that just to keep things quiet, like a blimp.
Oh, yeah. So Aquatech actually started in the same community where I live. So they were the first introduction I had. And luckily enough, I've never needed to try anyone else. So
actually, that's the brand that I used too when I was shooting with a Sony A7R and a 21 millimeter lens. I had one of their smaller soft ones, and it wasn't expensive. It was very easy to use, and I got great results. I had a lot of fun with it. I really, really did. So they make some serious stuff, but even their inexpensive products, you can do some good stuff with it.
You know what I have a lot of fun with is their iPhone housing. I'm out there all the time shooting slow-mo of waves and, calling people and trying not to look at emails. But it's amazing that you have that option in this day and age to take your phone out with such, good optics and ability in this tiny little box. And it's amazing to be able to do that.
What's the story with flash now when you're working out there? Because, again, I used it very limitedly when I was shooting, and I found out that it was I was getting a lot of kickback, because also the flash was right on the camera in line with the lens. But I found that I got better results without using a flash. What's your experience, and when do you put a flash on, if you do?
Yeah, flash it's real hard. It's actually an area that I really want to grow in. I see it as it has a lot of room to grow, so I can be more competent in it. But I use an SB 910, and it's got its own housing which sits on the housing. So you basically you're swimming with a pillowcase full of bricks. That's the kind of weight we're talking about here. And in order to lift the camera out of the water, to take the photo, to lift it up to your eye, you're furiously kicking to tread water, to lift your chest out of the water just to compose the shot. So it's not for the faint-hearted. And with the light changing so much, I find it's best to use in the very late afternoon in Australia, because in the morning it's kind of useless. After 15 minutes, once that sun rises, there's kind of almost no use for it. But yeah, it's a journey, and I'm pretty happy to walk down that road and learn more about it.
Do you drag your shutter when you're using flash, when it's low light, to compensate, to let the background come in a little bit? Do you play around with that at all?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's and that's the magic and the beauty of it, is you're just creating something that hasn't happened, and you're really open to interpretation. And with that slower shutter and then the flash just freezing it, you get these really crazy light kind of tails and just stuff that you wouldn't normally see in a wave, that you would just, walk past and not even think about. But being able to freeze it and to view it in real time, it's a pretty cool thing.
How long could you drag that shutter before it starts looking just a little bit too sloppy? I know because it's probably a very short window. We're talking about long exposures, but a long exposure might be a 15th of a second. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, I go 15th is pretty good. Even a 10th is all right, but it depends on where you are and what lens you're using and what the waves are doing. If they're big, slow, long waves and you're on land, you can open up to a second and get that, and just track it and get that beautiful kind of flowing kind of hair-like mane off the back of it. And I love experimenting with slower shutter speeds, and that's kind of all part of the fun, really.
And how often do you shoot from out of the water? I mean, I saw some images of you shooting from a helicopter, right? And I assume you've also shot from your surfboard or boats, or maybe not. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So the the vantage point of looking down on a wave from the air. Like I have used drones and stuff, but there's nothing better than being up in there personally and, using a 70 to 200 or whatever and just focusing on an exact part of the wave, not getting the whole picture, but just the picture you want to show. I think that's pretty invaluable. And I've spent a lot of time in the air the last couple of years just, getting a feel for it and wanting to consistently and constantly evolve in my work, so I can show new stuff to people and create new things.
And what about when you're shooting surfers or even not, maybe shooting waves? I think I saw you using a boogie board, or do you use anything to keep you afloat? Anything specific?
Yeah, a boogie board is a really kind of useful tool because it doesn't have any hard edges. You can still get under the waves, but then you get that buoyancy and you can rest. And you can just, even when you're getting, because some of the places, like they're a kilometre out to sea, so you've got to swim out to them, and just being able to put the water housing on top of the board and just use it as a kickboard is really valuable for preserving energy and, not getting sore shoulders and neck. So
you'd be exhausted if you didn't have that platform underneath it. I was looking in that video. It's like you're straddling this board, so it's like you're above the water from like mid chest up, and I could see that without that, you're working furiously just to stay afloat. Literally, you need that underneath you.
Yeah, some places though it is a hindrance because you're constantly going under the waves, and it's hard to pull, a 42-inch slab of floating foam through the wave and not have that thing pull you back like a drag car parachute. You really.
Will the housing keep it afloat?
The housing
was that kind of
slightly positive, so it won't sink. Yeah. But in order to use it, you have to lift it out of the water in most cases.
Of course,
so.
Yeah. Cool. I'm still kind of curious about when you the choice of lenses. Everything's different for whatever you decide to do, but anywhere between a 14 and a 300, will you just kind of say, all right, today's I feel like I'm going to, go fisheye and trying to get inside those waves. Is that your decision, unless it's an assignment or something?
Yeah, no, it's totally just how I feel and my previous experience with whatever wave I'm shooting, because once you learn the characteristics, then you can kind of put your own spin on things. So, yeah, it is a decision that you kind of make either, way before it or the morning of or whatever. But, like I said.
I'm glad you brought that up but do you really feel that, certain waves, enough to know, okay, I know what you're going to do, and I'm going to come back and try and get you the next time,
Totally. That totally happens all the time. Yeah. And it's all the missed shots. They're the ones that I just got, but they were slightly out of focus or misframed. They're the ones that keep you coming back, but no one ever sees them. But they're the kind of driving force to be like, okay, man, I was so close. I'm going to try again with that same lens, or I'm going to get one that's a little bit wider and I'm going to attempt that same shot again. Never happens. And you never get the same thing, but you get something.
Well, one thing I wanted to ask real quick before we maybe get onto some post-process is, a lot of my favorite shots are in what looks like weather. It's not a beautiful sunny day. You may even have rain going. I don't know, but you get those dark, the grays and the silvers and it's just incredible to me. Do you like shooting in those conditions? And how is it shooting out in the rain?
I absolutely love it. There's just seeing those dark, ominous clouds just pierce open even slightly, and these fingers of light just coming down and touching the ocean. That is my ideal dream light. And we're actually heading into winter in Australia here, and these mornings are starting to happen more often, and it's like greeting an old friend. So yeah, they're my ultimate conditions. When people are getting in their cars and leaving the ocean to go home, that's when I'm running down. When we get these things called southerly busters in the afternoons, and it can be a beautiful day, blue sky day all day. Then in the afternoon, this big kind of black storm front rolls through, and they're moments I never want to miss. Watching lightning and hearing the rumble while you're swimming is pretty cool. It makes you feel pretty small and appreciative of what you're witnessing.
Do you like to have people around you at all, or you usually just go by yourself?
Generally go by myself. Some places I like to have a spotter with me just so they can kind of yell out if the waves are coming behind the wave that I can't see. So that's pretty important for safety reasons. But generally, I'm just by myself, and sometimes I don't even push a button. I might not even shoot. I'll just float and go, okay, well, today didn't happen, but I'm still glad I went on the ocean. I feel like it was a reset, and I'm ready to load up on coffee.
There must be with Aquatech being there and obviously a lot of surfing, is there a good surf photography community? I mean, do you have a lot of peers working around?
Well, we're an hour south of Sydney, right? So we have the hustle and bustle of Australia's busiest city an hour away, but it's buffeted by the Royal National Park, which is this second oldest national park in the world behind Yellowstone. And having that natural kind of containment doesn't let the spread of people come down. But we do have, I feel like in the last couple of years, there is a wave photography, quote unquote, scene unfolding, which is basically what I noticed from it is maybe a sphere of influence that kind of gets passed out, and then to other people that gets passed out. But I can kind of see some of my own work in it, and it kind of used to really derail me mentally a little bit. But I feel like now it's my gift to people to show them, and then if they want to kind of mimic it or run with it or expand on it, then I'm totally all open with that. And it's the gift I can give and receive back. So
that's great.
A lot of your photographs look like they were processed post. There's a lot of drama that goes on in there. Now, I know also if you're shooting in storms and it's sunrise and sunset, there is an awful lot of drama, especially when you're being surrounded by, tons of water flying around you. But do you take any kind of special measures afterwards to pump it a little bit more? Are there any software applications you like or filter systems that you like that just add that extra little touch to your photographs?
So first and foremost, I'm trying to do as much as I can in the box that I'm using while I'm pushing the button. The more I can do there, the easier it is down the track. So with the changes of perspective and even just getting sinking a little bit to get on the water's edge, I find that itself will do so much more than trying to do something similar down the track. But I guess I'm just browsing through Bridge, then I'm opening it up in ACR. I'm going through all the sliders, the white balance, and sharpening it, adding a bit of contrast. And I try, sometimes you know how it is. You can spend hours removing dust spots and all that stuff on one image, or you can just basically bump the contrast up 5 points and you're on your way. So sometimes I'm spending a lot of time just trying to get things really perfect and cloning out little distracting kind of droplets. And other times there's literally nothing to do but convert it from a RAW to a TIFF.
Now, you do all of your own processing and printing. Do you do everything in-house, or do you send it out?
I have a lab that's half an hour away, and I spend a lot of time down there just doing test prints and just changing blacks and stuff. So, because for me, the image exists when it's printed in its physical form, and to have and hold and see the textures in it, that's the end result for me. The internet is great for sharing, but the image is alive. It's more than zeros and ones once it's been physically printed, whether it's on a book or as a fine art print.
Now, speaking of zeros and ones, you just circled back to what I wanted to come to. Early on, we mentioned the fact that you're colorblind. Now, you're having a lab print your work. Do you think much about the fact that what you are seeing and what a majority of the rest of the people who are not colorblind are seeing is different? Do you have any kind of reference colors that you go to or reference points that you go to? Or when you print, are you merely going for the numbers, which is how you can calculate color if you understand the numbering system of colors?
It's a bit of all of that, but the final check that I have before the image goes live is my wife's eyes. She'll be like, because I mentioned before we went on air that she's from California, so she'll look at the image and she's. Let me just start by saying she's the exact opposite of me in every way. She's structured and purposefully driven, and she has spreadsheets and stuff, whereas I'm just waking up and just bouncing around.
Is she a surfer too?
she doesn't really go in the ocean at all. So
Okay.
what I do is I do all the work I can. I get it to where I think it's looking okay, and I show her, and she'll just be like, no, that's got too much purple in it. That doesn't look real. And I'm like, oh, no emotion, no like, oh, that looks so nice. It's just the one kind of glaring fault. And that's what I need. I need to be just, smacked across the head and kind of just put into this way of looking at the images with no emotion. So she's kind of the last kind of line of defense before I release it into the world, because I don't want to have some Technicolor dream coat of puke in people's screens.
Psychedelic waves. Eh?
Yeah, exactly.
What about cropping and like, just pulling out one detail, because, this is kind of, I don't know how to say it, but, really maybe part and process of the whole time that you're looking at the ocean. I mean, do you have a philosophy that you say, I'm not going to crop, or I'm not going to just pluck that detail out and make that the image?
It's an evolving thing. I was someone who has really enhanced the way I look at images is a photographer called Tim Flack. I'm not sure if you've heard of him. He's shot a lot of stuff for National Geographic and BBC. He lives in London. And I was in a photo expo with him in Germany, and we had a few days where we were just riding bikes and eating hot dogs and stuff. And I was so fortunate to have one of the most creative minds in photography just input stuff about composition. And we would walk into galleries, and he would just break down photos in front of me in real time of why it works, why the left side of your brain, when you scan it from left to right, your eyes want to discover certain things in an image. And once I learnt some of these kind of techniques and fundamental rules of how we process things with our eyes, I really found that the possibilities were limitless. Like, he kind of showed me Rembrandt photos and just all old art through the ages, and just showed me the principles that overlap constantly and from the earliest art to now through photography. So yeah, Tim Flack was instrumental in the way that I compose and break down images for the viewer to kind of play around with their own eyes. Did I just ramble like?
No, I love that input. And again, you don't even have to answer really, but just the idea of cropping is not really an issue. I mean, if you feel like you can shave off a part of an image and make it stronger, why not?
Totally, yeah. I will crop to suit. I'll rotate. I'll muck around with it. It has no rule. I'll flip it horizontally. Just whatever I feel like enhances the image, enhances the moment, enhances the emotion, the power. I'll do it.
You want to talk a little bit about some of your business practices real quickly in terms of how you sell a lot of prints, you're still doing editorial work, you work in advertising. How do you kind of balance everything?
So I have reached where I am organically. I haven't had any kind of planned processes moving forward, but I guess looking at a breakdown year to year, it would be probably 40 to 60% licensing for images for brands and companies to use. I'm fortunate to have some really good clients who I have fairly regular work with. But other than that, my books, which go through Amazon in the States and through my website here, they're always ticking over. And my effort and time goes into prints, though. That's where it's at for me. I
would imagine that you have a large following amongst corporate art collectors and corporate buyers, because your stuff is perfect for that. It's powerful, and everybody kind of relates to these sort of images. Am I right or wrong about that?
Yeah, no, you're pretty right. What's also interesting is that a lot of my work is bought in Germany.
Really?
Yeah. So,
any idea why?
It must be something to do with maybe, I don't know. I look at them as a kind of advanced in art, if that makes sense. But they don't have an ocean like a lot of other places do. So I find that really kind of interesting. But yeah, behind US and Australia, Germany is the third highest kind of buyer of my work. So still trying to work it out, but I end up going there every year for some reason or another, and I love Germany, and I love the people and the place as well. So.
And do you reserve certain images for, let's say for like fine art or for gallery type of exhibition? And you say to yourself, this is something that stands out to a degree, or is it all kind of works in any way you want it to?
Up until recently, it has all worked in any way. But I've just been cherry picking the very, very best or the most weirdest, unique images and just not showing anyone and just putting them away and not thinking about them and just revisiting them every kind of 6 months and just seeing where we're at with that. So I guess there is long-term projects that are happening. I'm doing one now during this COVID thing because we're not really allowed to leave our postcodes, but I've got the Nikon 800mm with a 1.2 converter. So I've just been shooting a lot of stuff with that, some weird compression and really sharp bits and really out of focus bits. And with the reach of the 800, it's absolutely incredible. And it's changed the way that I view my local area where I've grown up, just because of how much detail it can show so far away, looking so close. It's been really, this whole virus has been incredibly hard on the world, but I feel like there's heaps of good points that we can choose to focus on the back of this thing going forward as well. So that's what I've trying to be doing, is just staying busy and working on new stuff. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. And do you shoot anything besides the ocean? I mean, do you when you go up the mountains, do you shoot there or not?
I have. I've done weddings and all of that stuff when I was cutting my teeth.
Right.
Yeah, but it's my one love. It really is. It's the one constant in my life, and it's the obvious
that comes out for sure in the images.
Subject matter for me.
Ray, it was terrific talking with you. If people want to see more of your work, where should they go to? Websites, Instagram? What's the addresses?
Yeah, so if you would like to know more about my work, just Google my name, Ray Collins, or my website's Ray Collins Photo, which is also my Instagram handle, Twitter handle, Facebook handle. So Ray Collins Photo. And thanks so much for having me, guys. It's been my pleasure to chat with you this morning. And hopefully we can do it again sometime, or we can meet in person when all this stuff is over.
Okay. Yes. Again, you have an open invite. We'll buy you a coffee and donuts. We promise you.
Excellent.
And also, Ray, you have 2 books that are out there. The names of the books are
Found at Sea and Water and Light. You can get them on Amazon or on my website, raycollinsphoto.com.
Okay. And again, gorgeous, gorgeous work. It's really terrific stuff. And Ray, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, in the meantime, if you are tired of having to run down to the newsstand every Thursday night to pick up the latest edition of the B&H Photography Podcast, I got good news for you. If you head on over to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you subscribe to podcasts and sign up, you can tell the dog to start walking himself, because you have a new podcast to listen to. For now, until next week, on behalf of John and Jason, my name is Alan Weitz, and as always, thank you so much for joining us today.